I'm not entirely sure what she means by old friend. Not that old. But I have been coming. I was trying to work out the first time I came to Egypt last night when I was remonstrating with a gentleman at the visa booth in the airport, and I worked out that it was 27 years ago, which turned out to be 3 years older than the guy I was talking to. So I have been coming for a long time, but I haven't been since 2019. And it is wonderful to be back, to be on the stage in Cairo, and particularly to be on the stage with His Excellency, the Minister. So we have about 25-30 minutes of interview. He has very graciously allowed me to ask pretty much any question that I want. So I'm going to start by saying, Minister, I think it's fair to say that 2022 has been a challenging year, not just for Egypt, but for the world. In your view, what have been the high points for Egypt, the good things, and what have been the biggest challenges? Just give us a review as to where we are now as we come towards the end of the year.
Thank you very much, Richard, and I have to start by saying Salaam alaikum, good morning everybody. And welcome back to Euromoney conferences in Egypt after 3 years. And let me say that it's a tough year. It's a tough year of many aspects. If we look at high inflation, which I believe this is the most difficult thing, because it's directly affecting ordinary citizens everywhere. And regardless of what is macroeconomics and regardless what you're going to say to people, eventually people measure things by how much they pay to get their normal goods and services. So this is one. The second one, if I may say, for macroeconomic stability, I believe the issue of accessing financial markets is tough. It's tough because inflation is reflected in high interest rate, reflected in migration of liquidity from the emerging market, with those countries who are in most need have the toughest challenge to get this money. I believe also the uncertainty with the war in Europe is putting very hard pressure on us. The third one or the fourth one is energy and food security. These are also very difficult. If I look at Egypt in particular, I would say Egypt was able to, until now, to succeed in managing all these shocks with difficulties. We've seen $23 billion leaving the country in the hot money. We've seen price of oil reaching at one day $140 for barrel, and wheat $550 per ton. We've seen also pressure on us with accessing financial markets. All of these were reflected on us. We hope that with Egypt economy, which is diversified, with a lot of resources, we've seen, for example, non-oil export exceeding $32 billion. We've seen Egypt exporting more natural gas, the Suez Canal achieving the best in its history, $7 billion, and moving to $8 billion. Also, the tourism sector is rebounding and recovering. All of these together gives us a hope for coming year. We hope that this will be eased in 2023.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about 2023 in a moment, but if we unpack the events of this year, you talked about three of them: energy prices, food and energy security, and you mentioned the war in Europe. Now, in your view, are these different things, or are they very much related to each other? Because there are two sort of schools of argument at the moment. One is that this is transitory, this is a result of events, and that once these events play through, particularly Ukraine, then we're going to go back to maybe not a 0% inflation world, but a much lower rate. And then there is others that are saying, no, this is an epochal shift, this is a global inflection point where we're going to see inflation at 4, maybe 5% as the baseline. Where do you stand on this? Is this transitory, or is this the indication that we've entered a new paradigm in the global economy?
My point of view, this was going to happen even without the war in Europe. Why? There was a huge mistake made over the period of COVID-19. Huge liquidity injected in the market when the whole economy was shut down, and once you started to open, it's realistic. Inflation must go up. The reaction of the inflation is increasing high interest rate with disruption in supply chain, with economy in Europe and in United States and the other hasn't started yet. So without the war, you would have seen all of these together. Yes, the war accelerated and added to that. So let me say, we started to see this even before the war. We started to see the high inflation, the disruption in the supply chain. We started to see the announcement of higher interest rate, and the federal started to mention that we have to go for higher interest. So all of these together. But let me say that if I come back to your question, I think the damage has done. The damage has been made, and in order to recover of all of these, you will take a long time. Why? Because I believe the war in Europe, with all the negative impact of the COVID-19 period and the negative impact of the policies adopted over the COVID-19 period, with the war adding to that, it will mean that we need a longer period. Assuming this war is going to stop, assuming the inflation will start going down, I think we will see a lot. But the question is, when this will start to improve, when the war will stop, when the high inflation environment will be coming down. This is a very important question. Why? Because according to the IMF, we have tens of countries who are under huge stress of debt and debt service, and also inability to buy food and energy for their citizen. So all this complication will result in it changing the whole map, it changing the current structure, and the talk now about whether this current financial structure, international financial structure, is feasible to continue, or we need to change it and to look at different models in order to be able to avoid the recurrence of what we have experienced over the last few years.
And do you think that I don't know what to call it, but the change in the dynamics of the geopolitical relationship between China and the United States, or China and the West, is also part of this in terms of the CHIPS Act, and there is a trade war really going on between the United States and China, to a lesser extent Europe. But that epoch of globalization, 1990 to 2020, 2021, that's over now, and we're seeing the world coalesce into blocks that are less integrated, and that is in itself a disruption of supply chains. Do you think that will play through, and that Egypt might even be a beneficiary as production and exports will want to be brought closer to the markets that consume them? So rather than building in Guangzhou, you build in Egypt, in the canal zone. So do you see that's another factor that is also driving global inflation? It's not, yes, COVID, yes, the war, yes, a number of other issues, excess liquidity, but also US, China, or West deglobalization. Is that another issue that will be underpinning this shift?
I believe it is an important factor with other factors. I believe that the tension, the uncertainty, how this geopolitical situation will impact economic decisions and will impact the financial markets and all of that, and what is the future of the global economy and how the change in economic powers between different sectors of the world. Yes, it will. For Egypt, I believe Egypt, with all what Egypt has done over the last 8 years, I believe Egypt is now a suitable place to attract more FDIs, to attract more, movement of the industries to Egypt. We've seen that Egypt is going very strongly in the direction of green energy, for example. We've seen Egypt is moving very strongly in infrastructure and preparing infrastructure to ensure that we are in a good place to be attractive for investors. I believe Egypt is moving in this direction. Before we came to the hall, I show you what is published today of Goldman Sachs. When they see Egypt in the period 2050 to 2075 is moving from within the Big 10 economic in the world. This is published just this morning. So it means that there is a good potential for Egypt to play this role.
One of the, I think, interesting facts that's happened this year is the emergence. We knew the Gulf was always there, but the world has sort of woken up to the economic power and importance of the Gulf states. How is that? And everyone's eyes are on it now with the World Cup in Doha. How is that? You've got some pretty powerful, pretty wealthy nations on your doorstep. They seem to have come in and be willing to be supportive, to take positions in investments. Just talk a little bit about your relationship with the Gulf and how you see that as addressing some of the issues and perhaps being catalytic for more investment.
Okay, last night we've seen what you are talking about in football. So I believe that our brothers in the Gulf, they see Egypt as a potential destination for investment. They see Egypt as an opportunity, and they see the opportunities. Egypt population is growing at a rate which is high. It's a market, it's a location, it's a cheap labor, it's a good infrastructure, it's a good position for the North Africa, and Middle East, even to Europe. I believe the Gulf sees Egypt as an opportunity for investment, and I believe also stability in the country will be attracting more investors. So what we've seen over the last few months and years, I believe it will continue, particularly that with over the last year, a lot of money looking for investment coming from the Gulf, and Egypt is one of the destinations.
But it's going into companies. I mean, that's what I think is the difference between. The Gulf has provided financial support to Egypt on a number of occasions in the past, in my memory. But the difference this time seems to be that yes, there's deposits at the central bank and all of that, but the majority of the money seems to be going into investments in companies, investments in projects.
It is absolutely true. It is absolutely true that we are talking about direct investment. We would like even the deposits at the central bank to be transferred to an investment, and this is one of our strategy. When the president announced that we want $10 billion FDIs every year, so we are looking for transferring these deposits into a direct investment in our company. It's part of our strategy that in the coming period we will rely more as one of the most important sources for hard currencies is the FDIs. So this is also an important factor.
Let's talk about the IMF and the relationship there. Where are we with that? I mean, I've been reading media reports in the last 48 hours that the EFF was on the agenda at the board meeting of the IMF yesterday, the 6th. So give us an update on where that facility is. And how it will go forward in the next few months.
I think it has been announced that 16th of December, and I believe that the issue that we believe that with all the shocks and troubles happened to the global economy and the Egyptian economy as a result, what we talked about it, we want to send a strong signal and the message about the macroeconomic stability of Egypt for the coming period. I believe the program which concentrate on fiscal consolidation, stability of monetary policy, structural reform, more transparent, more private sector involvement, and also more governance. So this is a structure which, as the Egyptian government with the IMF, we agreed for.
Mm-hmm. And you expect to see some transfers by the end of the year, maybe, or first quarter? Hopefully the first quarter.
I think we have to wait and for 16th of December, and this is one. The second one, let me say something. We look at the program as a message to our investors. We look at the program as a message to the Egyptian people that we are intending to keep the stability. And we look at financing from different sources. So the issue of financing for us is a diversification of our economy and also other sources of financing. So because some people go to the issue of the program with a specific point.
I understand. So foreign exchange, I mean, it's a perennial bug. I think I've sat on this, not particularly this stage, but a stage in Cairo, many, 20 times, 25 times, and talked to finance ministers, your predecessors, and indeed yourself about foreign exchange. Clearly, the flotation of the pound was a major event. And then the announcement yesterday that the foreign exchange reserves had actually risen, and yet there's a sort of underlying drumbeat that the government wants to get more foreign exchange. There's rumours and anecdotal evidence that people are finding it difficult to access foreign exchange. So tell us where you think the country is with regard to foreign exchange, what might happen next as far as you're able to say, and what is the priority for the government in this space?
I believe the current situation is temporary. I believe we have seen this situation before since 1970s, and it lasted for a short period, and after that we move forward. Let me say that we know for sure that there are 6 sources of hard currencies which we need to concentrate on for the coming period. Number 1, non-oil exports, which we believe that it must be moving forward, which the target of $100 billion. Last year we finished with 32, coming from $25 billion, and we hope the figures which we have receiving until now is showing that there will be an improvement. This is number one. Number two, we see Suez Canal, which moved from 5.5 to 7, and this year we hope that we will go for $8 billion. We see the natural gas export, which is improving in a good space. We now exceeding $600 million a month, and we hope that from next year we can be close to $1 billion a month or so. We also think that FDIs is an important source of financing, and we have to concentrate on that. If we look at the Egyptian working abroad and the remittance received, which achieved $32 billion, if we look at, for example, the issue of also, which I believe it's important, is rationalization of our imports. This can also play a source of financing by ensuring that the gap will be closer. If we add tourism sector, if we add the IBO program, I believe the potential for Egypt is there. It's a temporary period, and we believe that this temporary period will be very soon up.
You mentioned in some of your earlier remarks the importance of food and energy security. Now, there is a technical aspect to that, literally the facilities you need, the contracts you must have internationally, but there's also a financial aspect to that. So what is the role of the Ministry of Finance in creating food and energy security for the people of Egypt?
We worked on 2-3 dimensions. Number one, with the Ministry of Supply. As a Ministry of Finance responsible to finance buying wheat, which was a challenge for me at the time when I've seen the wheat ton price went to $550 a ton, coming from an average of 200, 230. So we decided to take this risk into the budget because two risks, the increasing in price and the exchange rate effect. This is number one, to ensure that bread will be at the same price. Number two, we injected around 8.5 billion Egyptian pound to increase the ration card subsidy between 100 to 300 Egyptian pound per month for around 9 million families in order to support them for 10 months. Also, we've seen that Takaful and Karama, which is cash transfer, increased 1 million families, and also the civil society groups alliance also decided to enroll another 1 million. Also, we decided to increase the pension payments and the civil servant and even workers in the public sector by 300 Egyptian pound per month. We decided to increase the minimum wage for those who are working in the public sector. So all of this together with other measures with the Ministry of Supply and with the people. If we look at a second dimension, which was energy. We decided not to increase the electricity cost, and the Ministry of Finance will pay this cost, the Ministry of Electricity. We decided also, given that we used to buy 1 barrel of Brent oil, at around 60, between 55 to $65 a barrel. When it went up to 140, at the same time, the Egyptian pound to dollar went from 15.6 to 24.6. So these two costs together is huge burden. We did not transfer this. We decided to also, with the Ministry of Petroleum, take this risk or this deviation inside the budget as much as we can. With also industry, we decided to put 6 billion Egyptian pound per year to subsidize electricity for industry, and also we decided to suspend real estate tax for industry for 3 years with a cost of 4.5 billion. So we've made a lot of measures and packages, and let me say that we will continue to ensure that we will be with our people until we pass this difficult time with packages of social safety nets, and with our industry. We have meeting today with the business community. We will continue to support until we pass this difficult period.
So this is, the title of this conference, as I'm reading it, is Investing in Resilience and Stability. So we've really talked a lot about the resilience and about I think congratulations to you. You and I have worked together for a while. I've seen the things that you've done as minister, the ministry has done, and the government has done to make the economy more resilient after. So congratulations on that from me. Let's look forward in the final 10 minutes that we have to the second part, which is sustainability. The longer term goal has got to be to get the Egyptian economy into a place where, yes, you're providing support for the poorest in society, but the vast majority of society is paying as near to a market price as possible. And that requires a sustainable economic model. You mentioned green energy. One of the things I've been surprised, impressed by, I think is both those words are true, in the last 6 months, is this really big group of projects in green energy, green hydrogen, solar, wind, all of this. And it seems to me that, unlike perhaps my own government or other governments who talk the talk about energy transition, this seems to be a key part of your country's strategy for the future. It's not just, well, we're going to make sure we decarbonize, but that we want to be a major player in this space in the next 10 years. Am I right in thinking that?
Absolutely.
And why do you think Egypt can do that?
I believe Egypt is in a position to do that with all its ability, and we have all the needed sources and all the needed facilities to go in this direction. This is number one. Number two, Egypt thinks this is the future, and also our commitment to move to green and to adaptation and mitigation for climate change, and also as a strategy for the future. We are a country who are depending heavily on importing oil and yes, producing natural gas, but the future is green energy, is the renewables. So we have to take the lead, and we have taken the lead in that. Now is close to 25% of our energy is renewable, and we want to target by between 2030, 2035, that 50% of our energy is renewable and green. So this is a top priority for Egypt and the Egyptian government for many reasons. We believe also we can be a source of providing green hydrogen, green ammonia to export to Europe, to export to our period, which also will be a source of hard currencies for the Egyptian economy. So this is represent a significant milestone on our future.
I was particularly taken with your, I think I will call it a bet, but your strategy, I think is another word, on green hydrogen, which you seem to be, the number that was mentioned close to $83 billion worth of investments. $83 billion, I know it's nothing, it's only a big, but $83 billion anywhere else in the world is a big capital program. Why is Egypt suitable for green hydrogen? What have you got that makes it a competitive location? Because it seems to me that you really are trying to build a sort of cluster around that. What are the specific characteristics of the country that make it a good destination for green hydrogen investment?
Again, I think from the strategy of the Ministry of Electricity and the government of Egypt, we think that if we move very fast on this and take the lead, we will put Egypt in a position that is a leader for this region and for the world as a one who is producing and exporting green hydrogen. This will be a good strategy for replacing the current energy situation with the green. This will be a significant for the future of Egypt. We are importing 120 million barrels of oil every year, costing us a lot. Also, our commitment to the climate change. All of these together, I believe, it puts the answer for your question.
Well, I think it's tremendously impressive, and I wish you all the best with it and with following it. I have two more questions before we must bring this to a close. The first is a very Euromoney, very global capital question, which is, where do you see Egypt in the global capital markets? Do you see that it's been a bumpy year, but that investors will see you differently next year? And do you have any plans to engage with them? And what is your view as the finance minister on the relationship with global capital?
I have to be very honest with you. It is a mix. It is a mix between, let me say that, a period of huge attractiveness for the investors, pressure from all the situation we explained, and hope and potential. So over the last year, the 2022, let me say we are at the end of the 2022, yes, the situation was not as we wanted, as they wanted, but we still in talk with them. We hope 2023 will be better. We started to see some good signs. We started to see good signs, and for Egypt, with all these difficulties, we tried to think about a different strategy, how to access financial market, but in an untraditional way. This is why we went to Japanese financial market and issued Samurai. Now we are on the door of the Chinese financial market to issue Banda. Now we are talking about issuing sustainability bond, and in addition to that, we are ready to issue Sukuk. So we try to, move in untraditional way, because the traditional way is still not favorable. But the good thing, which I have to mention now, we started to see some creative financing initiatives. We received many, and we are now studying good proposals for unusual, very creative ways of financing to reduce the cost and also to get financing even without accessing the financial markets. So this is good news for us, because it moves in the direction which we are looking for, the untraditional way of financing, particularly with the yield still not favorable, but we hope in the coming year we see the return of the investors, which also will be sources of financing. We also see more and more IPO. In addition to, we are trying to go for additional green Samurai back to the Japanese financial market with Sukuk. I think we are in talk with some investors about private placement and also to go public offering for Sukuk.
Well, that's a comprehensive answer. I'm sure my colleague Toby, who's about to join us on the stage, will be interested to talk to you about that. So we're going to draw this interview to a close, but I have one final question. The hardest question of the lot: who's going to win the World Cup?
Morocco. You've said about changing the power. This is seen in the world, in this World Cup. I've seen some big names leaving in the initial stages, which has surprised us. Germany, Belgium, and others. It's a big surprise for us. So let me say, I will put Brazil number one.
Okay.
I will put Brazil.
I think obviously I have to say England, but I mean I'm not sure I believe it, but I have to say. But I agree with you.
But if you want me to say England, I would say I would say England. If you want me to.
I'll get my hopes up, and then Saturday will be a terrible day for me. That's the thing about supporting England, is you have to do it, sort of not doing it.
But to hope that it will be in the final.
Well, yeah, that's fine. England-Morocco final, being beaten on penalties, but just quickly, your point about the change in power, I think or balance of power, relative power, because it doesn't mean that the West is actually I don't. It's a relative decline, not absolute decline. And I think you're incredibly prescient about saying that about the World Cup. It feels that it is saying the world order is changing, and that emerging markets and the Goldman Sachs chart that you showed me about this morning about what the largest economies in the world will look like in 2050, 2075 compared to now. The only inverted commas developed Western economy in the top 10 in 2075 is the US. All the others are Egypt, Indonesia, Nigeria, Pakistan. I'm not sure I believe that, but this is a very different world, and I think it is a world which Egypt has a strong and important place to fill, especially given your geographic position. And so it's great to be able to have slightly longer than I'd expected with you this morning. Minister, please join me in thanking Dr. Mohamed for joining us. A real pleasure. And having a competent finance minister, as some of you will know, is not a given. Look at the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, our next speaker, Dr. Hannah, is unable to join us this morning. So what we're going to do now is say thank you to the Minister. Please remain in your seats. And my friend and colleague, Toby Files, is going to come up and start the next panel, which I'm sure will discuss in more detail some of the topics we raised with the Minister. So, Minister, thank you again, and thank you all too.
Thank you. You're very good.